They came out dancing. They were excited. They couldn't wait as they came out onto the track, the dirt churning up under their feet. And as we looked down there, we were sitting in the stands. We looked down towards the other end of the arena. Here they came towards us, these tall, lean horses. And they could not wait to race. As you look down to the other end, there on the screen flashed Indian relay races. So as you look closer at the horses, you see them coming out here, and there's no saddles on them. There's basically nothing there except for a small bridle and someone leading them. And there's one person leading the front horse, and then two more horses behind with a couple people leading. They lead them down, and they line up right here in front of us. And there's 4 different teams. And they've got these just absolutely gorgeous horses. You can tell they are just bred and ready to run. So they get them lined up there, and at the sound of the gun, the rider has to jump on the first horse bareback. So he jumps up on, and then he takes off and races as fast as he can go around the track. When he gets around to the end and comes back to the beginning, he has to come racing in full speed, come sliding to a stop, leap off the first horse and jump on the second horse and take off like a bullet, headed around the track again. And then come around for the third time and come slide and race, jump off the horse, leap off, and jump over and jump on the third horse. All of this without a saddle, just completely bareback, just hanging on and flying around the track. Oh, it was amazing to watch. It was complete and total joy, complete and unfettered joy, and absolute chaos. Because when they come flying in there, you can just imagine you've got horses standing there and another horse is flying at them full speed. What's going to be the reaction there, right? You got these horses that are hardwired to race and run, and here comes a horse barreling down at them as fast as it can go, and it comes sliding in there, and the horses start dancing around. Actually, one guy, his horse was so wired, when he went to get on, the horse reared up full speed, threw the guy up in the air over the other side of the horse. He lands on his feet, comes racing back around, jumps back on, and takes off. Another guy comes flying around the track, comes racing in there. His horse slides to a stop. He leaps off his horse, jumps off in the other horse, but in the chaos and confusion, the horse takes off at top speed in the wrong direction and goes flying around the track the wrong way. Finally, he gets him turned around and comes back, and they just fly around. And there's something in that moment about watching them fly around that track that is just complete and total unfettered joy. You can just feel it. The horses they are bred to run. This is what they were born to do. And they just absolutely love racing full speed. In fact, when the announcer was asking, polling the audience what they liked best, bull riding didn't win. It was barrel racing and the Indian relay race that everybody loved the most, like out of the whole thing. That was just captured the utmost in the experience of joy. After we got done there, we got home, we were eating supper, and I was like, man, that reminds me. My sister's like, yeah, I'm hearing about that. That's what you used to do as a kid. And my daughter was like, Dad, I want to see you do that. You say you used to do that. I want to see it. Like, no, I'm a little older now. My bones aren't quite as flexible. I don't recover quite as quickly if I come flying off and hit the ground. Yeah, that's all in the past. It's just a joyful memory to recall. It's a story to tell, not something to do anymore. To be honest, there's a little bit of fear now that wasn't there before. Joy and fear. Have you ever thought that the opposite of joy is not sadness? There can be moments filled with joy that are blended with sadness, and the two can mingle together, right? The opposite of joy is you study this, the thing that fights against joy the most on the opposite side is not sadness, it is actually fear. Fear is the enemy, the greatest enemy of joy in our lives. In fact, if you study this even further, you'll find that the older we get, the more we tend to be risk averse. Any of you notice that as you get older, you tend to be more risk averse? And those who aren't, we seem to say they never fully grew up, right? There's something that hasn't wired correctly in their brain. But actually, as they're studying the mind, as they're studying the way we are wired and we work as human beings, they're finding out that actually pushing on past the fear and returning to the joy of unfettered joy and doing things that go beyond our comfort zone actually keep our mind healthy. Helps to prevent the early onset of Alzheimer's and dementia and other diseases like that of the mind. Fear actually debilitates our mind and leads us to a life that we would not want. Where joy leads us to break through those barriers of fear and to live a life that is thriving. Today we're going to go back to Galatians. We're continuing our series on the fruits of the Spirit. And today we come to joy. I want to start in Galatians chapter 5 and verse 16. Paul begins here by saying, "But I say, walk by the Spirit and do not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the desires of the flesh are against the Spirit, and the desires of the Spirit are against the flesh. For these are opposed to each other to prevent you from doing what you would." So what Paul is saying, you remember the place where Paul says, "Wretched man that I am, the things I want to do, I don't do. The things I don't want to do, I do. Who is going to deliver me from this body of death?" That's what he's setting up here. He says, walk according to the Spirit, because inside of you there's this war going on, and the desires you have internally to do good are at war with the desires you have internally to do bad, right? And both those desires exist within us. We have this struggle going on within us to have these two factions, these two factors warring against each other. And Paul says, walk according to the Spirit. Let the desires of the Spirit lead you rather than the desires of the flesh. For the desires of the flesh are against the Spirit. They war against each other. Then he goes on, but if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. Now, the works of the flesh are plain: fornication, impurity, licentiousness. Now, we often stop there. Like, those are the ones we often focus on, right? Works of the flesh, we often think of sexual sins and go down that road. But I want you to pay attention today to the rest of this list for just a moment. Idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, anger, selfishness, dissension, party spirit. Now, that's not a party animal spirit, all right? This is a party spirit, a spirit where you are my enemy because we are from a different party. Are you with me today? I'm American, you're English, right? Party spirit. Here in America, let's bring it a little closer to home. I can't say that because I'm independent. For the sake of illustration, one of us is a Republican, one of us is a Democrat. That's what he's talking about here, this party spirit that causes us to have divisions among us is a fruit, not of the Spirit, but it is a fruit of the what? Flesh. Paul says have nothing to do with the fruits of the flesh. Avoid party spirit. Avoid envy, drunkenness, carousing, and the like. I warn you, as I warned you before, that those who do such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. And then he transitions and switches. But the fruit of the Spirit is love. Thank you, Joey, for filling in for me last week at the last minute. You'll understand a little bit more why at the end of the sermon today when I tell you the closing story. But the fruit of the Spirit is love. The foundational fruit from which feeds all the others. You'll see as we go through this series that each fruit lays the foundation for the next fruit in the series. But I want to start off with something very important here as we get started with this. It's the fruit of what? Is it the fruit of Bonnie? Is it the fruit of Steve? It's the fruit of the Spirit. It's the fruit of the Spirit. This is not a work that you or I do. This is a fruit that is produced within us by the Spirit. All right? That's important to understand because when we come to this, I need to be more loving. So what am I going to do? Well, I need to make sure and work extra hard to be more loving. And I look around and I see people who aren't loving, and maybe I should help them to be more loving. And so I start fruit inspecting others around me, right? We're fruit inspectors here. And we do that to ourselves. And now if we're not measuring up, we feel guilty, and we start going, and we start with this load of guilt and shame on our shoulders. We start trying to work really hard to, when it says the fruit is from the Spirit, right? Just simple question here. Does an apple tree work really hard and think a lot about producing apples? No, right? What about a peach tree? Does a peach tree work really, really hard at producing peaches? No, it doesn't, right? It just does it because it's a peach tree. This is the way this whole thing is supposed to work. If we find that we are not loving enough, or we're not joyful enough, or we're not where we want to be in life, the answer is not necessarily to work harder, but to spend more time with the Spirit, to let the Spirit fill us more fully. Now, there are things we can do, and we'll look at this today. There are things we can do. Like any good gardener knows that if you fertilize well around a tree, it will grow better, right? If you add water to the tree, it will grow better. So there are things we can do to allow the Spirit to work more fully in our lives to produce the fruit. And we'll talk about some of those as we go on here. But bottom line foundation, we need to keep in mind that this is God's job to produce this fruit and not ours. We can cooperate, but it's His job to produce the fruit in us. The fruit of the Spirit is love. And today, joy. When you think about joy, what do you think of? Like, what is joy? It's at that moment when you're on the roller coaster and you hit the top and all of a sudden you go over the edge and all of a sudden you hear everybody shrieking and screaming and yelling, right? That's a moment of joy, right? What other moments of joy do you picture when you think of joy? What other moments, what other things do we associate when we think of joy, right? Maybe you gone to a good comedy show, right? And you're laughing till tears are coming down your eyes. Right? That's joyful. Or you heard a funny story or something, and there's joy in that moment. But joy is a complex emotion. It's a complex fruit, if you will. As you look at this subject, joy has many different components to it. In fact, it's not even just found in one part of your brain. It takes multiple parts of your brain working together to produce joy. The right frontal lobe works with the other sections of your brain and all work together to produce joy. In fact, as I was reading and studying about this, they talked about how joy impacts your physical body. It can cause your eyes to dilate. It can cause an elevated heart rate. It can cause rapid breathing. It can cause you to be more calm. It can cause a lowered rate of breathing. It's a little confusing, isn't it? Joy can produce the exact opposite effects in response. So if you think about it, if you're on a roller coaster, or if you're on the giant swing out at Maivanen, or the zip line, or you're going to step off the platform and go down, right? There's this heightened sense of energy, right? And that's most often what we think of as joy. But isn't it just as joyful if you're on a hike out in the woods and you come to a spot and you're looking out over just this amazing scenery and everything is just calm and peaceful, but you're just this overwhelming sense of joy just washes over you as you look out at the amazing beauty from this mountaintop peak, right? So joy has multiple different ways it manifests in our lives. And it's we won't go into all the biophysical responses and things, all the chemicals that go on in your brain that it produces joy. But it's fascinating to understand this. Now, keep that in mind. Keep this kind of this dual side of joy in mind, because here in a minute we'll understand that is important for us to maintain joy in our lives. The fruit of the Spirit is love and joy. I said earlier that the greatest enemy of joy is what? Fear, right? The opposite of joy is not necessarily sadness, but it is fear. Come with me for just a moment here. We're going to jump over to Timothy. Paul is writing here to Timothy, and he begins and writes him this letter of commendation. He says in verse 6, "Hence I remind you to rekindle the gift of God that is within you through the laying on of hands." So apparently Timothy's at a place where something has died, right? That spark, that fire that was in him at the beginning has gone out, and Paul says, I need you to rekindle that. I need you to go back to that first love, that first joy that you experienced. I need that to be rekindled in your life. Any of you there? You're kind of at a place in your life where you're like, I could use a rekindling of the fire within me. Like life can just drain it out of you. Brant referenced earlier the challenges, difficulties, like anybody perfectly joyful where you want to be in life right now? And Paul says, I want you to rekindle this thing that is within you that you received when we laid hands on you. That dwelt in the, I want to remind you, sorry, skipped here. As I remember your tears, I long night and day to see you, that I may be filled with joy. I am reminded of your sincere faith, a faith that dwelt first in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and now I am sure dwells in you. So rekindle this. Rekindle this faith which leads to this joy. For God did not give us a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power and love and of a sound mind, right? I did not give you a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power and love and of a sound mind. The Spirit, this is kind of amazing. The Spirit of God is intended to remove fear from our minds, and in place of that, put power and joy and a sound mind. He is to take and change us from being fear-based creatures to being joy-based creatures. What's the difference? Well, let's say you're out walking in the garden, listening to a podcast this last week, The 4 Habits of Joy-Filled People. And they talk about this fundamental difference between joy and fear is what guides your life and shapes your life. You're out there walking in a field of flowers. And the flowers are growing up. They're amazing. They're gorgeous. They're beautiful. They're everywhere. What do you focus on? Well, what's out there in the field with flowers? What's out in the field with flowers? Bees, right? If you're out in a field of flowers, you're going to have flowers, you're going to have bees. Some of the flowers may even have something on their stalks called thorns, right? Where is your focus? There can only be one primary focus in our life. Now, secondary things, like obviously you don't want to get stung, but if your first concern is how to avoid the problem of the thorns and the bees, your focus is a fear-based focus, right? If your first response is to focus on the beauty of the flowers and the gorgeous scenery around you, you are living a joy-filled life. Your first primary focus is joy-filled. Now, you can't take this to an extreme, right? Otherwise, we'd just all be dead if there was no risk mitigation at all. But again, you get the point. The primary focus, the primary thing that God wants us to be focused on is joy and not fear. He wants us to be focused on the opportunity and not the problem, if you will. So Paul comes to Timothy and says, you're discouraged, you've lost that spark, that faith which rose up in you and led you to live this joy-filled life, filled with faith, now needs to be rekindled. God has to remove your fear in order for that to happen. Are you with me this morning? God has not given us a spirit of fear, but a spirit of joy. So as I was listening, they then go and they have an acronym in this podcast. It's called CASA. What are you going to build your house out of, right? Spanish word for house, CASA, C-A-S-A. So there's 4 things you can do to water the tree, if you will, to come alongside and remove the barriers for the Spirit to work and produce the fruit of joy in your life. The first one starts with a C, and it is this. And this one kind of catches most people off guard. Like, the first thing you want to do if you want to be joy-filled is you want to go and do something adrenaline-producing that's happy, right? Flip on a comedy show and laugh a lot. No. The number one thing they say you have to pay attention to if you want to live a joy-filled life is calming. When you think of joy, we don't often think of being calm, right? Joy is kind of the high-energy moment of life. Calm would be more, we'd associate that more with peace, right? The next fruit of the Spirit. But no, it's tied directly to joy. And as they've studied this, as scientists have studied this, and they've studied the mind, the neurochemical makeup of your mind, they found that, as I referenced earlier, the chemicals that produce joy can cause several different effects. One is a high energy, high euphoric feeling of joy. But there is also the flip side of that coin, which is a calm sense of joy. And if you are always running at a high energy, high end of joy, you will crash, undoubtedly. And you'll end up where Timothy did, because you can't maintain that high end of joy for forever. You've got to have this rhythm of joy, if you will. This rhythm where you go from a high to a low, a calm, if you will. High to calm. So the first element of maintaining, of focusing on your life in a joy-filled manner is to make sure you have these moments of calm. You have these moments of worship where you come and you come together and there's these high moments, but you also have these peaceful moments that bring you down, and there's just a calm sense of joy there. Right, as we think about these different moments of joy in our life, joy can be found in like the birth of a new child. That's kind of a high energy, right? That's a high energy joy. There's excitement, there's passion, people that get together, we throw a party, right? Party for that. There's birthdays and there's Christmas and you open the gifts, and these are all the high energy moments of joy. But isn't it just as joyful when you find out that a friend who's been fighting with cancer is cancer-free? And there's tears running down your face. Not tears of laughter, but tears of joy, of happiness, because they have just been delivered from a huge challenge, a huge crisis. Or there's the joy that comes, that underlies, it comes after a sense of loss. That joy, as we heard in the song earlier, that joy of knowing that the resurrection is coming. That God has something on the other side of the pain and suffering of this life. And there is a sense of joy that undergirds our sorrow, that mingles and blends together with it, that carries us through and doesn't take us to a place of despondency, because we know that while it is sad and we feel brokenness now, that man, while sadness lasts for a night, joy comes in, right? So joy has this multifaceted approach, and it's important. Basically, what they're telling us is you need to experience all the areas of joy and not just try to focus on that high euphoric feeling. You may not feel euphoric all the time. In fact, you shouldn't feel euphoric all the time. That doesn't mean you aren't filled with joy. As they've studied this even further, they found that children's brains are shaped by their early childhood development, right? Well, that's pretty common sense. They found that children who are raised in a loving, safe environment have a larger areas of the brain that fires off joy. And children who are raised in a non-loving environment, who don't have that safety and security, those areas of the brain that trigger joy are smaller, and those areas that trigger fear are larger. Physically, in the brain, our brains grow according to these areas based on our early experience. And God comes along and he says to us, I want you to have a spirit of joy. And the fruit of the Spirit is joy. Now, this gets kind of cool. This gets kind of amazing as you look at it. The Spirit produces joy in your life just like a parent produces joy for their children. If you come and you understand that it's the Spirit's job to provide the transformation in your life, if it's the Spirit's job to produce the fruit in your life, you are not struggling and filled with anxiety over trying to produce that fruit yourself. Instead, you are trusting in Him to do it for you, right? As you read through all these passages, sometimes just do a search on the Spirit and read through how often Spirit and joy are tied together all through Scripture. And this foundational, fundamental trust in God is tied in with it. This trust that God has you, that even though you are broken, that you are a sinner, that you have blown it and you have lost it and you continue to mess up, that God has stepped in and provided a way for your salvation. That the will of God for your life, we just studied this in Sabbath school this morning with the Trailblazers. The will of God for your life is what? That you would have eternal life with Him. Jesus says, I came to fulfill the will of my Father, and the will of my Father is that I would not lose one of you. That's God's will. God's will for your life is that Jesus would not lose you and that you would have eternal life forever. If you ever stop and ask, what is God's will? There it is right there. All the troubles and trials that come, those aren't God's will for you, but He's there to get you through those so He can accomplish His will, which is that Jesus would not lose you and you would be with Him for eternity. Simple as that. And he says, this is what the Spirit comes to remind you of, to impress upon you. When you're struggling with your walk with God, when you're struggling with your salvation, when you're struggling with your performance in life, he says, trust me for your salvation. This is the foundational element of joy. God says, I want you to be like a child growing up in a perfectly safe home where everything is provided. You don't have to worry about food. You don't have to worry about love. You don't have to worry about clothes. Everything is provided for you, and you grow up in this joy-filled environment of safety and security and love. A child that grows up in that environment naturally develops the areas of the brain that produce joy in life and is more resilient. They will be less prone to struggle with anxiety and depression. Now, you may be sitting here thinking, yeah, what hope for me is if I didn't grow up like that, right? Maybe I didn't have that. Maybe those areas of my brain are small. There's good news. You can change your brain. First of all, the Bible says God will give you a new mind, right? When you come to God and you begin to see these things through the lens of Scripture and you see the promises of God, he promises that he will give you a new mind. But secondly, you can prepare the soil as you begin to put into place these practices, as you begin to focus on the Spirit and the promises of God, as you begin, we'll jump here to the next one, as you begin to implement these areas, you can actually physically change. You can shrink the areas of brain that trigger fear, and you can grow the areas of the brain that trigger joy through a few simple practices. The first is calming. The second is appreciation. If you're using the CASA, if you're following along, taking notes, the A is for appreciation. We would term this as giving thanks, giving praise. This would be a little more leading to the high energy emotional side of things. If you stop and you think about this one, appreciation, a tradition that used to happen all the time, families would get together and they would eat meals together, and they would talk about their day and share the kind of the good things that went on during their day, right? That's a form of giving thanks, of giving appreciation, a form of talking and telling the things that were good. Or you come and you tell someone you give them, you thank them for what they did for you, you thank them for helping you out during the day. All these are forms of appreciation. But if you think about Israelite worship, I want you to think about this for just a moment. Rewind a little bit to ancient Israel. When you read the descriptions of ancient Israelite worship, they're coming to Jerusalem for what were they called? Feasts or festivals, right? When you think about going to a festival, it immediately puts in your mind a picture or a spirit of joy, right? We're going to go to the festival. We're going to go to the fall festival. We're going to have a lot of great food. We're going to have a lot of great fellowship. It's going to be a great time, a time filled with joy. Right? So they're coming to Jerusalem to these festivals, and as you read the description of when they come to Jerusalem to these festivals, it is filled with shouts of joy and singing. It is filled with dancing. They are acting out the joy that is overflowing from within them. Think about David. When David is bringing the Ark of the Covenant, the holiest thing in the whole Israelite service, right? The holiest piece of furniture in the whole ancient service, and he's bringing that into Jerusalem to bring it there into the city of God. What is he doing? The Bible said David danced before the Lord with all of his might. This is the picture of ancient Israelite worship. Singing, shouting, dancing. Now, I don't think as Adventists we'll probably ever get there till we get to heaven and some of the restrictions are taken off of us. But one day we'll experience the fullness of joyful worship as ancient Israel did before God, right? But you see this picture of joy that fills and overflows, this euphoric moment where they are coming into the presence of God because, man, face it, God brought them out of slavery in Egypt. They lived among warlike peoples in the land of Canaan who were constantly trying to attack and kill them, and God delivered them from all those persecutions that came upon them. They blew it and they rejected God time after time after time, and God time after time after time came back and forgave them, right? Man, if there's anything that's going to set you up for joy when you think about coming to worship of God, it's the story of Israel. Which brings us to the third acronym, the third letter in the acronym, and that is S, storytelling. Storytelling, it's somewhat of an lost ancient art that we have lost, right? Instead of doing it ourselves, we watch it on TV or read it in a book. But But storytelling is something that is also, as you come and you tell stories, and they don't even have to be 100% happy stories, right? It can be something terrible that happened to you, and you can end up laughing with your friends about it, right? As you tell the story. But just those moments of telling stories are foundational for having joy in our lives. We need to bring this back, is what they're advising in our families. So as you're sitting around the dinner table together, take time to tell stories. And through your storytelling, teach your kids how to tell stories, because it's through storytelling that we relive those moments of joy. And as we relive those moments of joy, it actually makes those pathways in our brain again as if we were experiencing that for the first time. When you tell a story, your brain actually fires off those mechanisms, those emotional feelings and things, and recreates those pathways so they get stronger and stronger and stronger. It's no wonder that God, throughout all of Israel's wanderings and all of their, in the land of Canaan, he told them, I want you to retell the stories over and over and over again. I want you to tell the stories to your children and their children and their children after them. These stories of my deliverance, of my moving in your lives. Because he knows that's how he created us. He knows that's what will lead to a joy-filled life. Our minds are hardwired as we tell stories of joy. The last one. We're going to spend a whole lot of time on this next year. The Petersons recommended a book to Wendy and I, and we've been reading it. It's amazing. We're going to spend a whole beginning of the year on a sermon series on joy. So we'll just touch on it briefly here, but attack negative thinking is the last one. All those, and Paul references it here, all those negative things he listed as of the flesh are implanted or start in the mind with negative thinking. Party spirit, right? Negative others versus us, right? That's a negative thought. All these negative things. I'm not good enough. I can't do this, right? All these things that we speak into our own lives, all these negative thoughts, we need to war against that negativity. Negative thoughts about ourselves and about others is the last area. So the first three are all positive, right? Spend some time in calm joy. Spend some time, second one, affirming, affirmation, thanksgiving, praise, giving thanks. The third one is CAS, storytelling. And then the last one, attack negative thoughts. Like, is there negative stuff going on in the world? When you flip on the news, most of it's like negative, right? Just turn on the weather forecast. This is a hilarious illustration. Do they ever say there's a 75% chance of sun? Ever heard that? There's a 90% chance of sunshine today. Nope. 10% chance of rain, right? Always lead to the negative. It grabs people, pulls people in, right? We focus our lives, we spend our lives focused on the negative. God says, no, switch it over here. I want you to focus on the positive. I want you to focus on the happy, the joy. Fight against negative thinking. Yes, are there negative things that you'll have to deal with at times? Yes. But limit that. Keep that as small of a portion of your day as possible and train your minds to focus on the positive. Do the people around you have annoying habits? People around you do stuff that you can complain and criticize? Like as fruit inspectors, could we probably find a flaw with everyone sitting here in this room? We could spend our whole lives doing that, right? But what is that doing to our minds? It is shaping our minds to live a fear, negative-based life. And God says the fruit of the Spirit is a joy-filled life. He says, this is what I want you to live. This is where I want you to go. This is what I want for your life. By the way, let's go to Isaiah 61 here really quick. Isaiah 61. I want to read this to you. This is the mission statement of Jesus Christ. The mission statement of Jesus Christ. This is God saying, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to fill Jesus with the Spirit, and he will produce the fruits of the Spirit, and here's what he is going to be doing. Here's how he's going to be living, which is what he wants to do for us as well. Isaiah 61, the Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to bring bad tidings of everything you're doing wrong to the people. Oh, wait, that's not what it says. Because the Lord has anointed me to bring good tidings to the afflicted. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and the opening of the prison to those who are bound, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn, to grant those who mourn in Zion, to give them a garland instead of ashes, to give them the oil of gladness instead of mourning, the mantle of praise instead of a faint spirit, that they may be called oaks of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that he may be glorified. They shall build up the ancient ruins. They shall raise up the former devastations. They shall repair the ruined cities, the devastation of many generations. God says, I am sending Jesus to proclaim good news to you, to take away your sorrow and sadness and to fill your hearts with joy, to help you walk through the valley of the shadow of death and to fear no evil, to come out the other side focused on the joy that is before you, the joy of God, eternity together with each other and with Jesus. The mission of Jesus Christ was to come and to change the way we think, to change the way we live, to fill our lives with abundance, with joy. We've been struggling with the flu most of the week or so ago. And Friday, it finally started to let up. Yes, gonna make it to church. Everything's gonna be good. We're feeling good enough. We said, let's take out, we haven't done much in a while, so let's take the horses out and take them on a ride. So we get the horses out and get them ready. We saddle them up, not bareback this time, and throw the saddles on and head out into the woods, right? And it's just amazing. Like, the horses are behaving perfectly. Everything is great. And as we're riding out there, we're talking a little bit. Out in our state land woods behind our place, we've got all sorts of critters. You got moose, and you got bears, and you got elk, and you got deer, and all these different critters out there. And so we're always on the lookout for the different animals. If you follow Wendy's Facebook, you'll see the elk family that lives out there in our woods. We just saw them the other day. So we're always watching for these animals as we're riding. So I'm out in front on my horse, and Kaylee Ann's next, and Wendy's leading her little miniature horse along behind. And we're all going through the woods, and we're walking along. And I'm thinking, when you're on a horse, you can often see other animals, bigger animals, because they don't associate you as a human. They associate you with your horse or with whatever animal you're riding. And so I'm watching for these animals out through the woods, and it would be kind of cool to see a moose at a distance, or maybe a bear off at a distance, or the elk, And so riding along and just having a wonderful time, when all of a sudden I hear a commotion behind me. And I turn around, and all I see is the last 2 or 3 bucks as Kaylee Ann's horse is bucking, and she's bucking hard. Like, she's kicking hard, like Pendleton Roundup rodeo hard, what we had just seen a week before. And so going through, and Kaylee Ann's riding it out, and all of a sudden at the last second, her horse hits really hard and just throws her down into the ground. And so I spin my horse around and come back and check to see if she's okay. Meanwhile, Zephyr, Kaylee Ann's horse, is backing up and flipping herself around, like looking back and trying to figure out. And I'm like, there's something wrong with that horse. She didn't just flip out and start bucking on her own. So I jump off, check to make sure Kay's okay, and then go back to grab Zephyr. And I hand my horse off to Wendy, and so she's holding Peaches and Amar. And I go back and I grab Zephyr, and she's backing up and won't stop it. And so I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And they're meanwhile, Wendy's down there trying to hold the 2 horses and check on Kay and see if she's okay. When all of a sudden I hear a buzzing noise. And I realized that Zephyr wasn't misbehaving, that she had been attacked by a bee. Not a bee, actually, a yellow jacket. And all of a sudden, I hear a scream. And the swarm of yellow jackets comes and starts stinging. I think Kaylee Ann had about 8. I had about 5. Wendy had 3 or 4, however many. And the yellow jackets, we apparently walked through a nest. And I had been out in front and got by them, but they began attacking the horses in behind us. And so they just start bombing and attacking. They start attacking Amar. She rears up, knocks Wendy down over. Wendy's trying to get out of the way, protect Peaches from Amar coming down on her. And as she gets knocked over, Amar just bolts and takes off. So she's coming straight for me. And I'm standing there holding Zephyr in one hand, looking down at them at the other hand, and Amar's running straight for me. And I'm like, does she see me? Is she even in her right mind? Like, these bees are these yellow jackets are chasing her. What's going to happen? So I raise my hands, and I'm hanging onto one horse, and at the last second, she sees and swerves right over into Zephyr, knocks Zephyr backwards. Zephyr's like going backwards, back on her butt, back into the tree with her saddle and stuff. And Amar goes, and then Zephyr jumps up, and they both race off in the opposite direction to get away from the bees. Meanwhile, we're getting stung and pelted, and so we start running after them, trying to catch up with them and grab them, because we have a really busy highway out by Road 41, and our horses, that's where they like to go. They get out and they want to head for the highway. And so they are running the other way, and I start running after them. bees behind me, horses in front, like two motivations to get away there. So I'm running, and here come Wendy and Kaylee Ann behind me, and we're trying to get up. We're calling them, trying to get them to stop, and they head out. They circle around a little clearing and then bolt down the main road towards the highway. And I'm running as hard as I can, and I'm thinking in this moment, you know what? I should have said yes to Josh all those times he invited me to go running with him, because I am now out of breath, and my lungs hurt, and I'm like, I can't, horses are faster than me anyway, but I'm trying to catch up, and I'm trying to yell after them and run as fast as I can, and I can't hardly breathe and run, and so I start yelling and calling, and they aren't listening. They're just hightailing it straight down the road for the highway. And I have pictures in my mind of horse getting hit on the highway, what's going to happen, what are we doing? And so I'm racing down the road, and Wendy's all the way in their back, and she's got Peaches. Peaches, little tiny miniature horse, and she can't run. So Wendy just says, God, please stop them. And I'm running down the road, the horses are going lickety-split, and all of a sudden Zephyr just stops dead in her tracks. Her reins fall to the ground, and she just stands there on the side of the road. Amar's headed down, and all of a sudden, as I'm watching, she's racing down the road, and she spins around in a circle, turns and stops running, and just starts trotting right back towards me. Trots all the way back down the road to about quarter to a third of a mile, all the way back, trots right up to me and stops right in front of me. I grab her reins. Walk back and walk over and grab Zephyr, and Kaylee Ann and Wendy now have caught up to where we're at, and the bees are still above us swarming. We're nowhere near their nest now, and they're still attacking and bombing. One of them was actually even trying to burrow into the horse's neck. Like, these things were angry. And I swat it down and stomp on it, and they're flying above us, and we're leading the horses back, trying to get back to the pasture, and I get back to the pasture, finally get them in, and a wave of nausea just washes over me. It's like, okay, I really need to get a hold of Joey quick. I don't think this is not gonna go well. And we get back home, and we get the horses finally in, and Kaylee Ann can hardly walk, and so we finally get the horses back in, and everything's settled, and we go in, and now you got these huge welts. Like, horse's neck just has huge welts all over. We got these welts all over us, and all I can think of in that moment is the horses stopped and turned around and came back when Wendy prayed. I just have this picture in my mind of the angels leading the animals onto Noah's Ark, thinking that there must have been an invisible angel grabbing the reins of those horses and stopping them in that moment. Because bee stings, as like itchy and annoying as they are even a week later, go away. The flu that comes back with a vengeance, it goes away. But God's got Joey to have my back, and he's got angels there to have our backs. And he steps in and intervenes in our lives in these moments that could be awful. In these moments where everything that possibly could go wrong is going wrong, God says, I'm going to show up there because I want your joy to be full. I want you to know that you have a God that will be with you. I want you to know that you have a God that even when everything is going wrong, that is not my will for you, that I am here to get you through that trial and that difficulty and to bring you out the other side filled with joy from beginning to end. We have a God who, in the midst of this dry and weary land, when much of life is broken, says, I want you to thrive. And so I'm going to fill your life with love